Hi, Shauna.
Hi, Michelle.
It's so good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you as well. And I love your shirt. Does it say, what does it say, yoga and?
It says yoga is human rights, recovery, economic justice, racial justice, politics, environmental justice, disability justice, animal rights, food justice, gender justice, and solidarity.
Heck yes. Yes.
All
What a
of that.
shirt. And that's you. That's us.
I know. It's from Off the Mat Into the World. They gave it to me, so I love wearing it.
Okay, noted.
So thank you for saying yes to this conversation. And yeah, I appreciate you accepting the invitation to have the conversation. And
I'm honored to be here with you in this container. And thank you for inviting me in.
yeah. And I would love for you to share some about who you are and what you do in this spinning world.
Yeah. So I'm Shaunna Williams, aka the Mystical Minister, and I am healed from religious indoctrination of the South, and I am a thriver of many forms of abuse as a young child into adulthood. And I am a person who has been in recovery and is recovered from drug addiction and eating disorders. And so how that then transfers into the work that I do into this world is that I work with people who are where I was, who are on that path and seeking healing in their divinity. And so I work with people to free themselves of the binds of addiction and to free themselves from shame, guilt, remorse, and anything that pulls them outside of themselves for power, for strength, for divinity, for truth. And that can look like religious, psychological abuse. So I support people in those areas. The not so pretty form of light work, and I also do a lot of grief work with people. So anything that's needed that spirit is asking me to do with community, I do. And I have studied long and most in my own life going through that and being that person in the ditch and coming out. So that's me.
Thank you for what you do in the world and what you offer, all of what you offer to us, your energy and work and groundedness and just your ability to hold space. So thank you for that. So you know this conversation is about grief, and you just mentioned grief, and in particular grief connected to COVID-19, but so many things are wrapped up in COVID-19. And so I would love for you to share about how your heart is right now, given all that is going on.
Yeah. So my heart is full. Like my heart is also where my medicine lives. And I resonate with you because you said before, like I'm always in a constant state of heartbreak, right? It's in which our heart is broken, is which so much can grow and come from. And so for me, being in a state of like my heart is open, not so much broken, but my heart is open for this world, and in that very empathic, like from a child to now. And so I've been feeling like at first when I started to feel this come down and what was happening, like I put myself in quarantine before it was mandated to be in quarantine. And it was more so to step back and to look and to see. And so I started to feel the panic of the world, like I could feel the panic, I could feel the fear, I could feel all of that. And then I started to be able to feel the grief, like the deep grief of not knowing what's happening, of feeling very confused, not knowing what's happening, and literal death. And so I would observe that and I would feel that, but I also needed to be in my power, because my power is not in being weighed down by all of those feelings. Like I get to be a constant stream. Like I feel it and I'm like, okay, I'm with it. I'm feeling this. I'm not going to push it away. I know that it's going to flow through me because that's who I am. And so I allowed it to flow through me. And then I'm like, all right, okay. Now what am I here to do? Spirit, how do you have me show up in this? And I mean, I can go through that cycle 20 million times in a day. I can go through it once a week. Like I've been pretty stable, which I'm grateful for my lifelong journey to get to this point. So I've been pretty stable in my heart. My mom is a nurse, so she's on the front lines in Tennessee. And I went to Tennessee for 4 weeks to make sure that she had all her herbs, all her supplements, like all the things, foods, teas, all of that stuff. And I stayed there and just like made that for her and made sure that she knew and had the information, because we're not taught that. Like, I was raised in the projects in Franklin, Tennessee. Like, we weren't taught about herbs and medicine and how to heal ourselves and all of that stuff, like Dr. Sebi type stuff. And so over the years, me and my brothers have been kind of introducing her to those concepts, to where now she was just fully open to it and ready. So she has like her regimen that she's on, she's doing it. She's like, Shaunna, I took my horseradish and blah, 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 blah. So I feel very good about that. But as I was leaving, I had my own moment of grief. And it was like, in the reality of this world and what's happening now, I had to get very present to the fact that, like, as I leave Tennessee to go back to North Carolina, I may not ever see my mom again. Like, I may not ever see her again. And so I was just like, okay, like, and I mean, like, even saying it now is very real. And that's the reality that many people who have parents in this field are faced with. Many people in general that are a part of humanity right now are faced with that. So I got to feel that in my heart, and I had like my own little moving through of that. But I came to peace with that reality. And it's pretty wild, and maybe we'll talk about it, but I have a deep history with grief and how I work with it, and like, I've watched many people transition from this life to the next. So that's kind of like something that's in my bag of medicine, but it's very different when it's your loved one. So that's a little off topic, but also very much so on topic. That's my heart and where my heart has been in this whole thing.
Yeah, I appreciate what you shared, and just what you shared about your mom and your process of coming into a place of acceptance or peace,
Yeah.
with what might happen, and you naming that made me think of, there's a narrative that I think there are many narratives being perpetuated by dominant culture right now, but there's a narrative that we're all in this together. And I do believe in interconnectedness, to be clear, but we're all in this together, and that we're having the same experience. And because this is like the equalizer, and I actually don't believe this is the equalizer, because what's being unearthed and exposed is inequity and injustice, and there's nothing about equality in that, right?
Right.
So I just wonder if you could speak to that, because your mom is a nurse, and just what you named, and from your own identities, like what are your thoughts about that, these narratives that are being perpetuated that are actually false? And could you talk some about the ways in which we are experiencing this, in different ways?
Right. So what I like to say is, we are all experiencing this moment in time, but separately. Like, we're all experiencing this moment in time. Like, we're all aware of what's happening in the world, but how I'm experiencing it, how you're experiencing it, how every single other person that's experiencing it, it's different. And I think that as I get real to that and stop believing a lie, right? Because it's just like, it's just time for us to stop buying into lies. That's what this time is really calling for me, is like, the veil of BS is being lifted, and we can no longer argue with what's being unraveled and unveiled. So I'm very excited about that. Like, that just like jazzes me up. I don't ever say jazzed up, but it just felt very right just then. But I think about my friends that have kids, like my cousin, she has 3 girls, and she's a single mom, single income. And now she is working from home, thank God, right? Thank Goddess, thank whomever. And she has these 3 girls that she's never had to homeschool before, on top of what's happening in the world and the unknown. So now she's having to self-regulate, having to make sure that her kids know that everything is okay, while also not knowing if she's going to continue to have her job, how food's going to be brought to the table, and all of that stuff. So, like, I look at it like that. I look at my mom, who is like, she read me that one nurse died alone in her home, and I'm like, oh, how does that make you feel? Like, I ask her that question, like, how does that make you feel? And she's like, scared. you know,
Mhm.
and that's very real. There are some people who can read statistics and that brings them comfort. You know, there are some people who just like that's their way of getting by. They're like, oh, well, that was the beginning argument. Not that many people are dying. Not that many people are dying from this. This is not like, did you not see this? Do you not remember when this happened? And I was just very clear, like, it doesn't matter. This is very different right now. Like, this is something that is very different in this reality right here. And so knowing that my mom is scared, like that she really can't trust her employer to say if they have, what cases they have, where they are, and if they're actually really taking care of her and the other people that she works with. But she has to trust that to some degree that's the case while knowing that they don't fully tell the truth. So there's that. And I mean, there's all these kids that have no idea what's going on, you know, or that feels it in their bones. Like if I was a child right now, like I would be able to feel this and to know that something's going on, but be very confused, you know. And I would probably have a parent that's telling me, oh, everything's okay. You don't have to worry, instead of having the real conversation. There are people who are starving. There are people who are with spouses that are very abusive, that like to go to work was their saving grace. There are kids who are in abusive homes. I was one of those kids. I would not want to be a child at home right now. Like that wouldn't be safe for me. So there's so many different things. And there are people who are living in paradise that are like sipping their mocha lattes, that are, you know, doing whatever and very blessed. Like I have everything that I need. I am very blessed right now and I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, it's just, it's not the same thing. And it doesn't matter, like we can take this situation or even that perspective. If we're all watching a game, which it's not a surprise that this came out of my mouth, but if we're all watching a game, we're all experiencing and seeing different angles of the game. We're all being emotionally, mentally, physically impacted in different ways based on our perception and what we've been through in life. Like people who have had consistent trauma is experiencing this very different from somebody who had a very cush life or whatever. So I mean, like, I'm sorry. The comfort is not in feeling like we're all going through the same thing. The comfort is in knowing that we're all going through this separately, and there are resources to support us. There are resources to support us right now.
I so appreciate everything you just said. Um, and um, when you just said, you know, the comfort is not in us feeling like or believing that we're experiencing this in the same way. I love that, the way you said that. And I think the invitation or ask there was that we actually recognize the ways in which we're experiencing this differently, and that we align resources with that, which has everything to do with equity. That's
Right.
part of what you're naming. And I just feel like we need to elevate this truth that is counter to the narratives that are being perpetuated by dominant culture. So I appreciate you grounding us in that. Thank you.
And there are resources and people who are like, I am a part of a healing justice committee. Like there are so many resources. Like the lie that we've been, well, I mean, it's been very true for a while, but so many of us have stepped up and said, no, this isn't okay, and created an avenue of resources for us to utilize, that it is no longer the truth that there aren't resources. Like there are so many people who are stepping up to make resources available in an equitable way for people. Like when this all started to go down, I joined 3 different committees. One was about bringing herbs into inner city communities and giving like education on that. And then another one was on, okay, how do we bring resources in? Like, how do we actually like bring these resources online, but inside of these communities? And then 3 was, okay, how do we create an online hub for people to access these resources no matter where they are in the world? So like that's where I jumped in immediately, was like these three things, because we do have them and it is up to us. Like there's nobody who's going to save us. Like right now everything can collapse. Everything can collapse. But what happens from that is up to us. And I've been saying that too. Like, we're not waiting on the government to save us. We're not waiting on even God to save us. Like, God gave us strength and us power and us gifts to support ourselves and to support each other right now. Like, we got to stop looking for like something to come falling out of the sky. Like, we have already fallen out of the sky. We are now walking on earth. Like, it's time for us to utilize what's available and to also rise up into our gifts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that and that reminder. And um, I've been having a lot of conversations about collective care, which I've always had. Like, this is not, the term collective care, community care is not new to me, although I've been hearing it a lot more from people that are just learning what it is. And what you named about, there are resources and people are organizing. I mean, part of that has been, it's out of necessity because these institutions are not going to take care of us, right? There's a whole history, we understand that. And we have to take care of ourselves. I mean, that's been what has been true for all of time, right? And so I appreciate you naming that and just the ways in which you're stepping up and offering resources and connecting in that way. I'm wondering if you can share some about, and you mentioned your mom, and this is what made me think of this question next, is that you know, are there losses that you are experiencing or acutely aware of? And I know, I would imagine you're acutely aware of your mom being a nurse, right? You named that. And are there other losses you've experienced? And not necessarily people, but maybe people, but we're losing a lot of things, right? It's just in our experience of this. Are there losses you've experienced or you're acutely aware of at this time?
So all like physical deaths have been like indirect, not directly my blood family. Like I've had friends that have lost friends, loved ones. I've had a lot of death happen in my family unconnected with this COVID-19. Like I went to Tennessee. I was going to go to Tennessee on March 21st initially because my great aunt passed. My granny passed away in November. So it's like that has been around for a while. And so my family has been moving through that. But then this came and this cloud of grief came. And so like in the hospitals in Nashville, that's the one that I'm like most connected to because I have friends that are also nurses. So those hospitals are seeing death rates like they've never seen before. I have friends in New York and they're experiencing stuff like they've never experienced before. There was someone that one of my friends posted a video of all of these bodies and body bags. And I was just like, first I was like, what is the point in that? Like showing that video. Like we are already traumatized by this. What is the point in that? And then knowing that some people want to have proper burials and they can't have them right now. Some people want to be with their family and they can't right now. Some people are facing that very fear that almost every human has. Almost every human has is dying alone. People are dying alone. And then we're losing, I mean, like this always seems like very posh in the grand scheme of things, but like my birthday was April 9th and my brother's birthday was April 12th. And so my brother was wrongfully accused of murder and has been in prison for about 15, 16 years. He was sentenced at 17. And so like when I think about him and like how they basically have no human rights already, and like him in there and just like the grief of his care, like he doesn't have the same care that we could have and that he deserves. And then I think about like our birthdays and when I was gonna go, like I was gonna go to all of these different trainings, right? Like I was gonna go to all these trainings so that I could support my clients and also grow because we know that as we're in trainings, we also grow and experience and learn. And so like the grief of that reality. Now I didn't feel like, because I'm a pivoter too, like I wasn't like, oh, like throwing a fit. It's like, okay, right now it's like this is life. I'm pivoting, but also like I was very much so looking forward to that. That's a moment of grief. And I want to say to people that it's okay. Like if you had plans, like the fact that they're no longer, you can feel sadness. You can take a moment to pause and be like, man, that was what I thought was going to happen this year. And now, right now, reality is this. Like that deserves its own process of grief. But there are just so many people that are dying. And I really want to be able to talk about that, how um, in the work that I do with people, the process of death, I actually like in a form of breath work that I'm trained in, I can support people to transition and to be able to go into that with peace, grace, and light. And then also supporting that travel after that. And I had an experience on Saturday where like So this is gonna get a little real spiritual on the other side. Is that okay here? Okay. So I had this constriction in my throat and also in my chest to where I couldn't breathe. And like I was very aware. I was like, okay, all right, I get it. Like I know that I can breathe. Like I had to just connect to the fact that I can breathe on my own. I have that strength. I have that gift. And I was aware that it was a way of channeling all these people who were losing their breath just like that. Like they literally could not breathe. Their lives were being taken without that ability to breathe. And so I was connected to that. And so I just went right into some breath work and like breathing even deeper than I normally would. And also went into some like protection and banishing work to support those spirits and to also support what was moving through me. And then I went into just like sending them light, whomever they were, and praying because like what can happen is that we get so wrapped up in our grief or so far removed from the death that is happening that we don't take a moment to honor those spirits that still need to be honored. And so it was just like that was causing like the suffocation. And so once I did that, I haven't had that experience since. But that is an invitation that for anyone, if you have lost someone right now, you still can take that time to honor them and to take the time to do whatever the celebration of life would be or whatnot, and know that you don't have to be in person and at an actual event. You can create that because that is something that is very much so cherished and needed, and you have the right and the power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. I mean, we're going where we need to go, right? Like, and I feel like the gift you just offered is for people to take the time to grieve in whatever way and to acknowledge people that are transitioning around them and to really feel into that and to make space for that. So thank you for that offering and gift. And I'm wondering, how are you allowing yourself to grieve? Because I know you have many practices, right? How are you making space for your own grief as this pandemic unfolds moment to moment?
Yeah, so every morning when I wake up, I say thank you, giving honor to the fact that I did get to rise again on another day. I have deep, like, meditative practices. I have deep rituals of calling in protection and support. So I do that from some of my teacher light initiation and training. And I just do whatever I need. Like, I'm deeply connected with my needs and my care. And so if I wake up and I feel some kind of emotion that I don't normally walk around with, I'll just sit with my heart and just like literally touch it like this and like, okay, what's coming up? What needs to move through? What do you need from me? Like, this is literally, I get to parent myself, that's a gift and a tool that we all have, is to just be with us like we would a baby in this time. I breath work is like the number one thing for me that's really supported me. Being in nature, just being on my porch is great. I do a lot of deep ritual work that I've been trained in that supports not only me but everyone else, and that's great. I move my body if I need to, but I just do whatever I need at any given time. That's really just listening to myself and then providing that for me.
Are your practices that you're engaging right now different, or because you've had a lot of these practices for a long time, from what I understand, right? And you're obviously offering them as well and holding space in people in that way and energy. And so I'm wondering if, just related to grief, if you're noticing your practice is shifting based on what has happened, the context now, or if you're doing what you've always done related to your practices.
Right. So I am doing what I've always done. In my mystery school, like, my teacher has sent some extra like prayer work that we can all do. But like, Michelle, the thing about what's happening right now, like, to some extent, was like the first part of my life, like trauma, chaos, uncertainty, all of that stuff. So it's like being on the journey that I've been on to heal, and I will continue to heal. Like, what I've done to get here, I get to continue to do. Like, that's why I feel that I feel so stable and so strong and so sturdy, is that, I mean, I was basically born for this moment in life. And like, spirit, myself, my holy ancestors have created this solid foundation to support me to be able to not only be in my power, but to also support other people. And I don't really believe that we can be supporters of other people if we don't have a solid foundation, even though I know that it's been very backwards for a very long time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate what you just said. I was talking to someone earlier, interviewing them for this interview series, and um, she's someone I've known for a long time and has held ceremony for me and rituals and practices. And so she described having this foundation for a long time and just doing what she's always done, although there's a little bit of a shift for her just based on COVID-19. But you know, she felt grounded as she was moving into this moment of COVID-19, where I think a lot of people are grasping for practices because they may not have had that foundation, and may not have been on a sort of healing journey in the way you're describing.
Right. And we're not all here for the same reason. Like, that's another thing. So can't really compare in that way. And like taking time to listen to what really resonates with you and not just following someone else. Like, we do have time to discern. We must. We must. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you share some about the importance of making space to grieve? Collectively is what I'm thinking about, but obviously we are individuals that make up the collective. So you can answer it however you would like to.
Yeah. So I'll start with a personal story. I lost my friend Brooke in 2014, and that was one of the people that I did watch transition. Like, I watched it. It was a beautiful moment. She was in the hospital bed, and I came in, and her mom said, "Shaunna's here," and she smiled. And I just was right by her, and then that final tear came that sometimes comes if you've experienced that or not. And I got to be there with her. And the road after that, like, I had to keep living. Like, I worked in mental health, and so I had to show up. Grief was around all the time. People were overdosing and all of that. She overdosed. And so I was very much so in that environment that constantly reminded me of it. I had to go to a conference like that next weekend. And so I didn't have the space. I just felt anger, which can be a part of it. You know, I just felt anger. But underneath that for me was sadness that I hadn't been able to feel. And so I carried that for so long, like maybe a year, because I was, again, working in mental health. Like, I needed to take a break from that environment that was very triggering. But I worked in it for like a year, and I found that my heart shut down. Like, I shut down, I shut off. It's like I was roboting through life, not even knowing it. And I was just moving through the motions and showing up for people, but not even fully there. And so that's what happens. And some people may not even know that it's happening. Like, I wasn't aware that it happened. And I mean, like, I've been working in mental health for 4 years at that point. And so if we do not take that moment, I took some time to step out. If we do not take that moment, then we become robots. We become, our hearts become closed. We're unable to process other things that are happening around us. Like, so it's imperative that we take the time. We aren't afraid to step back and say, hey, I need some time to grieve. Even if it's like a month, I need this time to grieve. And pulling on resources too, because that's something that for whatever reason, like, I was meditating. I still had a really good meditation practice at that time, but I didn't feel like going to therapy or pulling on like any of those resources for whatever reason. And that's something that absolutely can get us through. So just utilizing those resources too. Collectively, if we do not take time to grieve right now, we will perpetuate what's happening for generations and generations and generations and generations to come. And that's kind of what we're living in right now too. So it's imperative. It's almost like life or death. And it's not almost, it is. I was just a little afraid to make it that real, but it's life or death. We have to take this moment to get present to this reality that's being projected to us, and also that is very real at the same time, and process it and be with it and utilize support to get to the other side of it.
Yeah, what you said struck me, and in particular, what you said about if we don't make space to grieve, then we're just going to perpetuate what is happening right now. And then you said that's part of it, it's like what is happening now, right? And so I'm wondering if you can say more about that, your connection with, like, we don't want to pass on this trauma generationally, and we're in this situation, like, it sounds like I mean, who knows why we're in this situation, but we have some wisdom about how we got here. And so I just wonder if you can share more about that generational connection and ancestral connection and what is happening right in this moment.
Right. So when I think about my ancestors and I think about the time of slavery, like it was all about being able to survive, right? All about being able to survive. And then when we had our freedom, we still weren't equal. We still weren't, like, things weren't provided for us for that being equitable for us. Like we were always under thumb. We forgot who we were, and we, like, our resources are being utilized by people that is not in their DNA and in their bones, but we feel and then fed to us as if it's newly introduced, right? It's very, very strange and very, very weird. We've given away our power again and again and again, and then we deny realities. Like, we deny that it's happening. We are so conditioned. We're so conditioned to believe that this is how it is. This is what it is. And then if it's too much, to deny. Like, we have literally shut down our own hearts. Like, our ancestors shut down their hearts to be able to feel, to be able to scream, to be able to cry, to be able to roar, to be able to battle, to be able to say enough is enough, because they didn't think, based on history, that they had a voice or the ability to move in a different direction. And so, like, we've been like this, bounded with our hands behind our back, just reliving that. Like, it's been in our DNA, it's been in our bones, like the rape, the, like, all of that trauma that's happened, but mainly the silencing and the disempowerment. And so, like, as we're here, this is very familiar. It's like, oh wait, feels like sacrificing, feels like people are being sacrificed. We were sacrificed before. Is that what's going to happen right now? Wait, wait, wait. Are we actually going to come together as community, all of us, or are we going to be left behind again? You know, and then, like, there's going to be this higher, like, are we just going to keep living this thing? And right now, it's like some of us are coming out of that because we've been working on it to rise above that cloud, that fog of delusion, of illusion, of false reality. And then some of us are still so addicted to it because for some reason, to rise up even a little is fear, not for some reason, is very clear, is very scary. And also, it's like, what is up there? That's nothing. This is life right here. So I think that we we must continue to, like, question, to rise, to have these conversations that we're having, because if we do not, then we will continue to have this bullshit reality projected on the generations to come, that will continue to feel like they're disempowered, to continue to not fully step into their divinity, to continue to not feel that they can connect and be one with Mother Earth, to continue to believe that they have to wait on a system to make them well that's making them sick. Like, no more, no more, no more, no more. And I do believe that so many of us are awake now to where we can stop this. Like, this is the precipice. This is, like, that turning point that we're at right now. It's like, will we go this way into what we really truly can have beyond anything that we've known in this world before? Or are we just going to keep being right here? And I'm not here for this. Like, I'm here for this. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, and just going into that more deeply, and, you know, calling us into a new way of being. That is not necessarily new for everyone, right? But as a collective, calling us into something new together. So I appreciate that. And so yes, I have one more question for you, which wasn't on the list, which is, you know, if you think about this moment, like just this moment, what lesson, if that word resonates, is COVID-19 offering to you, teaching you? I don't know what language will resonate because it's, you know, different. So just if you think about the moment you're in right now, what lesson is COVID-19 offering?
For me, what's continued to come through is that I don't need to do more. All that I offer is enough right now. Like I said, that I jumped in and I started all those committees and were a part of all the things. And it's like, I'm offering that into the world, and I have been offering these things into the world. So I don't need to do more. Um, and also, like, solitude is so necessary for me. So it's not so much like the lessons that I'm learning is just hearing. I'm listening and being able to hear on a deeper level because it's called forth on a deeper level right now. Um, and then just the reminder that, like, we humans are so good. Like, we really are so good. And there are more of us that are good than not. So just being able to experience that and see that on a large scale, I really do love that, because I do believe that the light will win. The good guys will win. Like, we humans are good, and we truly do have this. We just got to unplug from the BS and stay unplugged.
Thank you for that. And thank you for making time for this conversation today. I really appreciate who you are and what you offer and all of the wisdom you just gifted us.
Yes, it has been beautiful to be in this conversation with you. And thank you for trusting me to have it, right? And creating this container for this.
Absolutely. There'll be more for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You are your beating heart. Ready, cracked open, wide open. So